I don't really know, because a lot of veterans are going to go home to their family once they get out. So those are the first. That's what I did. Those are the first people they're going to
Yeah.
encounter,
Yeah.
and they're going to encounter the realization that they're not growing like you. They're not doing the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Now you got to still relate though.
It's
Before 30. So however long you were working, you were thinking about, oh man, now Monday through Friday, I got to do this again. And then Friday night I get off, and Saturday, and you were regimented in that mindset. How did you start shifting? How did you start facing the voice in your head that's saying you're meant for more, you could do more? What was kind of the first couple steps? Because when I'm sitting in my room depressed, can't move, what's the first couple things, that I could do to kind of get this flow started? This is 10, 15 years in the making for you. So
your supporters are more often than not those people who are closest to you. The people that are closest to you are often the ones who don't want to see you succeed.
but you're not with a group of people also trying to change. You're still with that same group of people that you were sitting next to in the cubicle, who's been sitting there with you for the past 5 years, and he's not going to want to see you change, because then if you change, he's got to change or he looks bad.
Oh, okay. We're going to dive into this. So,
welcome to the Saving 22 podcast, a podcast for veterans. I'm your host, Trevor Blazik. Let's get into the episode. All right, welcome back, everybody. Saving 22, episode 4. I'm excited to have Clint Murphy on. I'll have all his info down below. I ran across him on Twitter. Just first thing I saw in his bio was psychology, so I sent him a DM a couple months back, and now we're here. He owns the Growth Guide. He's got a newsletter, a podcast. He's got a training, coaching platform, and just really excited to kind of dive into the simplified psychology, as you call it. I really like just that terminology, just dumbing down the brain as much as we can and kind of diving into who Clint is and maybe helping you guys out here on the show. That's the goal. So Clint, man, excited to see you. Glad to have you here. It's a wonderful Saturday. If you want, man, just go through who you are, how you came to this spot, your why, how you ended up here.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. And for those listening, I'm not a psychologist and I don't play one on TV, but I do read a lot in that realm and in the self-help realm. So we'll talk about that. The Coles notes for me is, for the last 25 years I've been in finance, and the last 14, 15 of that have been in the real estate field, with the last 8 years as the CFO of a large multifamily residential real estate developer by day. At night, I'm a father, husband, and for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been building online. So building what I'd say is an exit from the traditional 9 to 5. And so what that's looked like is I jumped onto social media, as you and I were talking about before we went on air. I launched a podcast in 2021, jumped on Twitter, started getting serious about that in August 2021, and was able to grow a pretty large following within the next 2 years. The last year or so, the algo's been a little different, so relearning how to do things. And then my wife, after a couple of years of running solo, which was really depressing and exhausting, which is part of what we're going to talk about when we talk about depression and some of the challenges. My wife joined me on the team and started taking a lot of the heavy lifting and helping out. She quit her job and went full time to working with me, and that really lightened the load. Around the same time, though, Trevor, I launched, started working on a business outside, and so it's just always doing more, and that leads to the mental exhaustion, which leads to some of the things we'll be talking about today. And now where we're at today is we have the podcast, we have the newsletter, we have the social media, Twitter. We've also grown reasonably well on LinkedIn, and starting to take YouTube a little more seriously. And I've left employment, which adds to the stress loads, and am launching my own real estate development business. And so where does psychology come into that? I say I try to simplify the psychology of success and money by looking at the guests that I have on my show, on my podcast. We've had about 150 plus episodes now, tend to be authors in the self-development, self-help realm. So books on depression, books on anxiety, overcoming depression, overcoming anxiety. Uh, we may talk about books on financial independence, and people are probably aware of, Die with Zero or Do Hard Things. And so these are the people we have on to have conversations with. And that's where I'm learning about these things. And then I try to take those books and boil them down to like a Twitter thread or a long form
Okay.
tweet,
Yeah.
and share what I've learned from these books to help others who may not read the full book. So they may be able to listen to the podcast and hear the conversation, or they'll see me writing about it in the newsletter or on Twitter.
Yeah, which is incredible. Great market to be in, especially now. So, I mean, nobody's reading books. Not nobody, but there's minimal people reading books nowadays compared to what it was even 10 years ago. And
Yes.
I saw that, yeah, on your website, you got at the bottom the list of books you're reading. I thought that was pretty awesome. But I thought what was more awesome is that it's plural and that you have 5 books on there and you're reading them all. So is this the cheat code to reading 50 books in a year? Because I've always wanted, not always, for the past couple of years, I've really turned into wanting to be the guy that reads books. And it's
Yeah.
been a constant struggle just to sit down and read. Maybe once a week I'll do it. Sometimes fall off for a month, sometimes have a really good month. What is the trick, I guess, to reading 5 books at once or 50 a year?
Well, that's the key, Trevor, is the trick to reading that many books is the same trick to becoming a runner, is the same trick to becoming a writer. It's, if you want to be a runner, you run. If you want to be a writer, you write. If you want to be a reader, you read. Right. And so I'm making that sound simple, but I published a tweet today, and James Clear talks about this. It's this idea that too many of us, when we say we want to read 50 books, we get enamored with the 50, and we struggle with the 50 because it's a big goal. It sounds big. It's actually not, right? It sounds big. And so my method's a little different than what your method might be, because I'm trying to do so many things that I don't necessarily follow what I'm going to tell you to do. But what I do is I have to read 50 because I was interviewing 50 authors a year, and I'm not going to have someone on my show and not read their book. Surprisingly, so many of the people that come on are surprised that I've read the book. And I'm like, well, wait, like, how is someone inviting you on their show to talk about your book and they haven't read your book? Like, what's going on here? So let's take a step back from that. I may sometimes just read a book on a Sunday. Like, I'm going to read 1 or 2 books this weekend because in the next week I record with 2 authors. So I'll read 2 books in the next 4 days. But that's not what I'm going to say to you. What I'm going to say to you is just read 10 pages a day, right? Read 5 pages a day, read a page a day. Like, don't focus on the big goal of 50 books. Focus on 5 to 10 pages. Because if you can read 5 to 10 pages a day, let's say 10. If you read 10 pages a day, you're reading 200 pages every 20 days. Let's go even simpler. Let's do 7 pages a day, because then you're reading 210 pages a month. And 200 pages, well, no, you got to go faster than that, because that would get you a book a month. But if you could do 10 pages a day, every 20 days, you should be finishing a book. So that's going to get you 1.5 books a month. That's going to get you 18 books a year. Okay, well, now we need to speed that up then. We need to read 20 or 30 pages a day, right? So what's that number that gets you to the 50 books that leads to a number of pages per day? That's where we need to focus, is not on the 50 books, but bringing it back to what is that daily behavior that leads to the goal. And that's the number one thing I think that has changed my life and leading to success is with everything I want to do, with what you want to do. We always begin with the end in mind, right? Stephen, it's why 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is the one book everyone should still be reading, right? Everyone like wants to read Atomic Habits. Like, go read Stephen Covey first and then read Atomic Habits. Because when we begin with that end in mind and then we chunk it and we break it all the way down to what are those daily habits I need to do to get to that end in mind, you're going to get there. And so when you want to run a marathon, you're not going to start by running 5 miles. You're going to start by getting a pair of running shoes and going for a run around the block. And then the next day it's a little bit of a further run. And we're just going to keep doing that slightly further run until we're running a marathon. Same with
Right.
the books.
Now, did you start doing that with one thing and realize you kind of got to start doing it with everything? Because I realized that
100%.
I'm doing it. Yeah, okay.
100%.
Because I
Yeah.
realized the first time I started to do this was with the podcast. It's like, all right, I want to
Yeah.
be successful in the podcast realm. Don't have a number, don't have anything too crucial to hit. I have some goals, but it's not necessarily what I'm aiming for. The end goal is to be a successful podcaster. And I mean, kind of like you, have a coaching and then, put it all together. And I realized in the podcasting, I dumb it down to, like you said, an actionable goal every day. So
100%. That's
on the
exactly
days
it.
where, on the days where I don't want to get up, I at least know today, if I make a clip, I'm reaching that goal. And I guess
Yes.
the end goal with that mindset is to fill the whole day with those actionable steps.
That's
So
right.
I never thought
That's
about
right.
that part, but adding and adding and adding, and slowly this is where you're building the habits and
That's
continuously
right.
going.
That's right. Yeah, and adding, but not, like you take a step back. It doesn't have to be continuously adding. It's adding enough that you're hitting the eventual goals that you want to hit. And the best part about it is, that if you've done those 7 to 10 things in that day, that's a friggin' successful day. If you've done 4 or 5, that's a really good day because it's leading to those 4 or 5 big long-term goals. And now if you fuck around and find out, life's fine, right?
Yeah.
You're not screwed. You've done the big things. You've gotten the big things out of the way. So now you can go to the small things and life's going to be okay. You can go watch Netflix and not worry about it because you banged out the biggies. And so that to me is really important. Too many people want to go to the Netflix first and then think in the head, oh, it'd been really nice if I did this, this, and this. It's like, no, do this, and this, and then be like, boom. Like often I'll be almost like an imaginary mic drop and I'll be like, I'm going to watch a couple episodes of Game of Thrones, like, because I got the big
Yeah.
ones done.
And it happens with people working overnights too. That's why they don't like working overnights. You wake up at noon and now you got all day to think about, I got to go to work. Yeah.
Well, like if you think about your audience, right? You're trying to talk to veterans, you're trying to talk to people in the military. The perfect people who understand this from the get. I mean, all the training that goes into like, here's your regiment, here's your behaviors, here's how you make your bed, here's how you get ready. Like that's the type of behavior we're talking about. And then once you get to that, I've hit my 7 things, I've hit my 10 things. Now it's civilian time. Now it's okay. Now I get to let the guard down. And for me, that started at about 30 to 32, somewhere in that range. Up until then, I really didn't accomplish much in life. I wasn't really on the right track, and had an experience where a friend kind of made fun of me, and I was out of shape, and I was reading a triathlon magazine later that night, and I told my wife I was going to do a half Ironman. She was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it was the first time where instead of just like thinking it and like doing it in my head, I actually signed up. Like at the time, Stephen Covey, their company had an app that attached, we didn't call them apps that back then. They had an extension that attached to your Microsoft Outlook, and it turned it into like begin with the end in mind and followed like the Stephen Covey like habit planning. And so I had that and I attached it and I built this like 1-year plan to do the half Ironman, lost 20 or 30 pounds, did the event, signed up to do an Ironman a year later, kept training for that and finished the Ironman and lost, another 10 or so pounds. And so that one event, that 2-year trajectory of fat, out of shape, loser, couch potato who only accomplished shit in his head, to completing an Ironman, losing all that weight, starting from that 0, that taught me, Trevor, your point. If I can do this with Ironman, I can do this with anything. And so that same mentality became, I'm going to apply that to my career. I'm going to apply that to my finances. I'm going to apply that to building businesses, whatever it was. I mean, the podcast, the social media, you'll see a pattern with how I do all of them. How did I grow on social media? Like brute force effort. I did it every single day for a couple years. I wrote 70 threads, like 77 days in a row or something. Like it was just brute force effort. And so that you're right. That lesson I learned in my early 30s, I'm 45 now, has been what's carried me along the way as I've grown in all these different areas.
Yeah, I see. It's very similar leaving 9 to 5, a conventional world, all of that. A lot of people join the military to leave that. That's their point of doing military. Then when they get out, like you said, we learned all this regimenting and all of this stuff, discipline, you name it. We've learned this way of life for the military. And it's kind of similar with people going into 9 to 5s. They learn this way of life. You grow up in school, you go to your job, and you've kind of regimented your life for the 9 to 5. And then getting out in the military and getting out in that, it's relatively similar. You start putting all of this energy towards what you want to do, and you keep mentioning everything that you're doing. I can't help but notice that you seem to enjoy these things you're doing compared to what really 90% of America is doing right now. Is just wake up, go to work, weekends, have fun. And this this weekend right now, right before the show, we're having a little pool party um at my apartment complex. And I was just listening to, I can't remember who, I closed the tab, your podcast with the lady, and she was talking about alcohol. And
Yes.
they're giving out free alcohol at this party. Like if you work at the or live in the apartment complex, you get free alcohol. And I can't help but think, and this happened 3 weeks ago, I was out there on a Saturday doing push-ups and homework, and people were partying with alcohol, and they came up to me. Like, it's Saturday, dude. Don't you want to like relax a little bit? It's like, man, I'm doing throughout the week, I'm doing what I want. So then it rolls into Saturday and then Sunday. And every day I'm
Yeah.
just doing what I want to do. I'm not fixated on Saturday I got to relax like you're saying, or Sunday I got to relax like you, because I'm not working 9 to 5 every day hating. Does that kind of
Yeah.
roll
Yeah.
that
Like
that rolls into your family life too, right? Like you just
everything, because you're creating. So someone, I think it was Matt Paulson on Twitter, wrote, like, I don't have an Instagram life. I don't have these crazy vacations, and I don't have these wonderful like images of X, Y, or Z, but I have the perfect Tuesday. And you're building, Trevor, and I'm trying to build the perfect Tuesday. And what we mean by that is I love my life. I love what I'm doing every day. So you could take my Tuesday, and if my Saturday is my Tuesday, if my Sunday is my Tuesday, I'm a happy dude. Like I don't need Saturday to make up for Monday to Friday. That's what they're doing. That they're
right.
living an existence they don't enjoy. So Saturday and Sunday, they're like, let's get shit faced, party and have fun, and forget Monday to Friday, and forget that we're about to have to go through Monday and Friday. And so let's kind of like erase that through alcohol, right?
Yeah.
And we'll get schmammered, we'll have fun, and then we'll like like Monday to Wednesday we'll think
Yeah.
about the weekend we just
We'll do
had,
it all again next
right?
week. Yeah.
And then Thursday and Friday we'll think about the weekend we're about to have. And you're like, why don't you just enjoy Tuesday? That's
Yeah.
what you're trying to do, and that's what I'm trying to do, is create the perfect Tuesday, because then life's good. Like you don't have to like go on crazy vacations to be happy. You don't have to drink on the weekend to be happy. You don't have to have a beer uh, with dinner on Wednesday to be happy. You just have to live to be happy. That's the goal.
Yeah. Well, and it all starts with facing that demon in your head. I mean, I'm sure when you were an accountant and working with all these, and even after school, going to your job and working, at some point in time, you're like, man, I was meant for more than this. Like, this is dragging on. What you said, you turned at 30, things started shifting. So at 30, before 30, so however long you were working, you were thinking about, oh man, now Monday through Friday, I got to do this again. And then Friday night, I get off, and Saturday. And you were regimented in that mindset. How did you start shifting? How did you start facing the voice in your head that's saying you're meant for more, you could do more? what was kind of the first couple steps? Because when I'm sitting
Yeah.
in my room depressed, can't move, what's the first couple things, that I could do to kind of get this flow started? This is 10, 15 years in the making for you. So
Yeah, those are two. Let's tackle both of those separately. Let's go through the voice in the head, and then let's come back to depression because they're slightly different for me. Uh, the first one, the voice in the head. So it's interesting because I always look at these things and I say that I've had three major shifts in my life. And the way I describe it, and I intend to write a book about this, so I always say that so that it'll force me someday to do it, is I look at it and I look at us as, computers with a skin suit, and I look at software, hardware, and operating systems. So that first event with the friend embarrassing me in my early 30s, no longer a friend, not surprisingly, I upgraded my operating systems, right? I improved how I improved my habits and my behaviors. I did the 7 habits of highly effective people. The second one is software, and that's the voice in your head that you're talking about. And some people say we may have up to 60,000 thoughts a day. Up to 80% of those thoughts are negative, and they're a recurring thought loop. I'm not good enough. I don't enjoy my life. And you go down the list, right? And your wife says something to you, or your girlfriend or your partner, and you're like, they said this. No, they didn't. Your brain told you they said that. The voice, like when you said it, the voice tells you that's what they said. Your voice tells you that's what your boss said. Fucking boss didn't say that, right? He
yeah.
didn't. And so that was the second major change in my life, was eliminating the voice. And so I was probably about 35, and I made a decision to mutually part ways with my company. When I look back at the way they did it, Trevor, I was fired. Like when I look back at the way they did it, I was led down a little trappy trap. They knew how I would respond to the offer they gave me, and they gave me an offer, and it was like, hey, you can just keep doing what you're doing for the next 10 years, or you can bet on yourself and we'll support you in looking for a different opportunity. And I was like, I'll bet on myself. And they were
Yeah,
like, good,
every day.
we don't have to pay your severance. Good, let's roll. And then but I had met with an industrial psychologist at the time. I was at the director of finance level, and I knew I was capable of more. This goes back to you're capable of more. I knew I had the capability, the brain power, the drive to be a chief financial officer. I was an accountant, the CFO or owner of a company. That was kind of that was where I wanted to get to. But the voice in the head was in the way. And so the next book I read that had a major change in my life, and this is why 7 Habits and this next book are the 2 books I recommend the most to people. It's Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy. And that book changed my life because the chapter on thought auditing, which is part of cognitive behavioral therapy, changed how I live. And what the thought auditing was teaching you about the voice. So up until that point in time, I would say the voice controlled my life because what I heard, I let the voice interpret it and tell me the next step, tell me what that person had said and
Right.
misinterpret it. And so what thought auditing is if you say something to me and I hear the voice, I write down what the voice said on a piece of paper. On the other side of the paper, I write down 4 or 5 more logical thoughts. So if your wife, for me, said, "Hey, can you load the dishwasher?" I might hear, based on the way she said it, "You're a lazy piece of shit." And I write that down. And then on the other side of the page, I write down, "Hey, I just cooked dinner. It'd be nice if you could help me. Hey, I've had a long day with the kids. Can you help me?" And I just write like 5 more logical things. I come back to it, 15 minutes later, and I'm like, oh, more likely than not, she didn't mean you're a fat, lazy piece of shit. She just wanted some help around the house. Like, that's probably way more reasonable. Voice, you lied to me. And the more you do this, the more you realize 98% of the time that voice lies to you. And so you start to get to the point where, like when I was first learning this, I would go into work and I would watch other people and they would say, like, oh, we were just in that meeting and this person said that. And you could see the voice at work. Like you could,
Uh-huh.
and I would start laughing out loud because I'm like, "Ooh, that's not real. That's the voice talking to you." And so I just started like really, really doubling down on this. No, 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 voice, you're wrong. And to the point where you almost shove it in a closet. And you're like, get lost, voice. And Trevor, you learn that in so cognitive behavioral therapy, not a lot of people realize that came from Stoicism. And so
Okay.
when you look at, I always look at two schools of philosophy that I really love. Stoicism, I look at as like an active philosophy. And so Stoicism, thought comes in, and they had this rule that you examine thoughts before you let them stay, and you give assent to them or permission to enter your mind. Like, so you, oh, the voice said this. I'm going to examine that thought auditing, and I will either let it in or I won't. That's Stoicism. Buddhism is just ignore the thoughts, not ignore, but don't attach to them. So just let the thoughts pass through your consciousness and don't grab them, because Buddhism is also recognizing most of those thoughts aren't real. Just stay in the present moment. Stay focused on this conversation with Trevor. Don't let that thought grab you and because it's going to pollute you. Stoicism says no to it. Buddhism just tries to not touch it.
Okay.
I tend to like the Stoic side of
Yeah.
saying, no, 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 I'm going to train myself not to have these thoughts versus I'm just going to let them continuously pass, because I find that a little harder because eventually I'm going to grab one. And if I haven't taught myself how to shut it down, I'm going to
Right.
fail.
Right. No, that's interesting because I started when, like I said, the depressed in my room and everything, starting the podcast even, I started with Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius said,
Yes.
I mean, not said anything. He just, one of his major things was, what is your purpose? So I wrote it on my mirror and I woke
Yeah.
up every day looking at that. And it was just a constant reminder. All right, I'm here to find out what I'm supposed to do. Maybe I'm not doing anything right now. Maybe I don't have much going for me right now, but I know every day I'm at least here to figure out what I'm supposed to do in the future. And I've always wanted to get into Buddhism more. So for you to simplify that for me was fantastic because now it solidifies that I do like Stoicism more. And it's interesting that once you are woken up to that, it's hard to ignore. I mean, really like anything else. I'm going through kind of a body recoding for my back. And once I've figured out the way my body's supposed to work compared to what I've been doing, now I'm looking at everybody like, oh my God, everybody's doing this wrong. It's like buying the new car. You buy this Hyundai, you go on the road and you're like, oh, look at all these other Hyundais. It's the
Yep.
same, it's the same exact thing. Why do you think it's almost like we're all defaulted? And maybe we're not, or maybe that's kind of who Marcus Aurelius was, is a guy who wasn't defaulted to this, but that voice in our head isn't on our team. Or do you see it more as it's on our team? It's just trying to help us look out. We're just vigilant for things.
So a lot of people hypothesize that it's a defense mechanism from when you're a kid, right? So it's trying to protect you, and more often than not, it doesn't realize like what served me when I was a kid isn't real today. And like if my wife says that to me, I'm thinking back when I was a kid, when my mom was mad at me, she would say X, and like it's misinterpreting things and it just doesn't realize. So it's always trying to like defend and protect and watch out. But the inadvertent consequence is it actually is worse for you. So
Yeah.
it's caught in a reality that doesn't exist.
Right.
And the more you can ignore that, the better. The more you can, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to be in the present moment and use logic and reason. And that's what Marcus was always trying to do, right? Is not get stuck in the past, not get stuck in listening to the voice, but to say, well, no, like what is right in front of me? And what do I need to focus on? Right? Like right here, right now, this moment with Trevor, not my childhood, not the person who's yelling at me, like right here. And so it's that default conditioning that's happened all our lives. It's the television shows, it's the news, it's the like everything is putting us in a perpetual state of fear. Right? When you look at social media, when you look at the news, when you look at the newspapers, like headlines are have to be negative and tragic and horrible to grab your eyeballs. And so
Right.
there's not enough light and joy in the world that gets us focused on positivity. And I think part of that trains the brain to always be on high alert. And so
Yeah.
maybe that's where Buddhism helps a little. Stoicism, I think they focus on meditation as well, but from the meditation side, I read more about it in the Buddhism and just being able to sit there quietly with your breath and doing a silent meditation or a loving kindness meditation or box breathing and letting go and just being present like that allows you to kind of detach from the heightened sensitivity and madness of what's in the world and just be calm.
Right.
So that's why I love both. That's why I love both because sometimes you just need to let go and just detach.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's like that voice never grew up with you.
That's
It,
right. That's
it was
right.
it was
Yes.
born at age 3 and it never
Yeah.
grew up. And now I'm age 26 and this voice is still clashing with me like I'm 3 years old.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And like you said, it's on the defense, but that defense it's only for you. Just as I mean, to simplify, that voice is on your team, or I guess defending for you. He may not be on your team, but it's trying to defend only for you. So if your wife, girlfriend, family, anybody says anything, it's filtering it for you so that you can be the winner of whatever scenario it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And I started realizing that voice was kind of taking control of my life when my loved ones weren't feeling
Part
loved
of
by
it.
me, or yeah, or
Yeah.
I wasn't I was only helping myself, and I that's not who I am. That's not how that's not why I joined the military. That's not how they train me. It's
Yeah.
not any of that. And this voice in my head was constantly on my team, but battling against me. It's like you have a I don't know. It's like you got a guy on your team that's trying to score on you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like, would anyone even like would anyone let a if when you think about the voice in your head, would anyone ever let a roommate talk to you that way? Would anyone ever let like a team member stay on the team if they were like that? Like if you were in the military, that would be the guy who got dragged behind the barracks and you all kicked their ass to like shape up or ship out, you know? Like there's no
Yeah.
way you would let someone talk to you like the own voice in your head. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and you just take it, and you take it, and you take it, and then
Yeah, just
finally
let it
one
beat
day
you up every day. Yeah.
what now this is the second podcast in a row where the person turned it around 30 years old due to bullying, whether the bullying happened at 30 years old or it happened
Yeah.
growing up. Um, with, I mean, the past couple years, everybody's been saying, not everybody, I use these general terms too much, but people have been saying, bring bullying back. Do you see that instance where you were bullied as a good thing or a bad thing? Do you think bullying not needs to be brought back, but it would be better for the people if there was more, I guess, people talking shit?
I don't know. That one's a hard one for me because I look back to high school and yeah, there were bullies and I was raised from pretty young to, the a bully doesn't respond well to getting punched in the nose. And so like I always had it as my job to defend my friends and to stand up to bullies and in grade 5 or 6, like, I got in a fight with a kid in grade 7 who was trying to bully my brother, and he knocked my tooth out, and, I think I was grade 5, he was grade 7, and from that, my dad signed me up for karate, like, a week later, and so I did that for the next 9 years, and so I was always comfortable standing up to bullies, but I see my brother who was 13 months older than me, my parents held him back in grade 1. We were in a province that's prioritized French, and they wanted to switch him into English, but his English wasn't good, so they held him back a year to redo it. So we were in the same grade our whole lives. And he was a big kid. He would have probably been one of the bigger kids in his class. Now you put him back a year. Red hair, freckles, speech impediment, talked a little bit like Mike Tyson, the high pitch.
Yeah.
So you've got this big giant guy who has this high pitched speech impediment. So he was bullied like his whole life, right? Even though he was the big guy, like, and he was in karate too, like he could just destroy any of these bullies, but he was a gentle dude. And he just took it. And like I look at where I've gone in life, I look at where my sister's gone in life. She has a master's degree in education. I've got a master's degree in accounting. And he just drives a truck. And he's done some college courses. He's taken courses. He did one of those 1 or 2 year programs in where you get like a diploma in technology. And he's never bothered doing anything other than drive. And I talked to him and I'm like, like what's going on? And he's like, like if I'm in an office or I'm in like, he's like, I just feel like people are gonna bully me. Like with trucking, like I'm in my truck. Like there's no
Yeah.
people. Like no one's ever gonna like I just drive and there's no one to bully me. And I'm like so I look at that, Trevor, and he's 46. Like he turns 47 this year and he's never lost the impact that bullying in childhood had on him. So I don't think bullying should ever come back. I think the way we deal with it shouldn't be to like teacher it out, but we should teach kids self-defense. We should teach kids to be strong. We should teach kids that if there is a bully in class, like, hey, they're a bully because generally something bad is happening in their life, right? The old hurt people hurt people. And so, one, seek to understand it, but also two, don't tolerate it. So, if there is that bully in class, 4 or 5 other kids are going to teach that bully not to be a bully. Like,
Yeah.
and so I think the way it's been being handled is the bigger issue, right? Where it's like we just make society soft and weak and say like if anyone does anything, we're gonna like crack down on it hard. Because what people don't realize, my son goes to an all boys Catholic high school, very sports heavy, and we don't hear much about bullying. And we were talking about this with some of the other parents. They have like a moms group where they all chat with each other on WhatsApp, and like one of them said something about like not bullying or not fighting, and one of the other moms was like, "Oh no, no, no! There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of bullying. It, no one, no one talks about it. No one brings it
Mm,
into the
yeah.
light." But like, here are some kids and some examples of things that they've been doing over the last X years, right? Where they take that kid on the football team and drag him into the change room and take photos of him naked. Like, it's like, oh no, that's happening. It's just not. No one's talking about it. So it is happening. It's just because the kids know how hard it'll get cracked down on, they bring it into the shadows and hide it, which I
Okay.
think is
Yeah.
worse, right? Because now they hide it from the parents. They don't talk about it. And where does it go? We all know where it goes, right? It goes to social media. And that kid who in the past would have just been punched on the playground or gotten in a
Right.
fight on the playground and we would have taught him to defend himself or her. Now they're being bullied on Discord. They're being bullied on Instagram. They're being bullied in the DMs, and we're only finding out when it gets to the worst end, right? We're only finding out. We're only
Yeah.
finding out when those kids kill themselves.
Right.
Like, holy shit, what was happening? Like, we've now gone backwards and we've realized, like, we've seen the videos that were being sent to them. We've seen comments that were being sent in the DMs. You're a loser. No one likes you. You should kill yourself. Like, and you're like, holy crap, who was saying this to a 13-year-old girl? It's like, wait a second, these are her classmates. Like, but we don't find out about it until it's too late. In the past, you found out about it when it happened.
Yeah.
That's what I would say is the difference, Trevor, is I think for sure, like we're humans, we're tribes. Like
Right.
someone's in the tribe or they're not. And if they're not, they're getting bullied. We just weren't in the past. We saw it and we felt it and we knew it because our kid came home with a bloody lip.
Mm-hmm.
Our kid came home with a ripped shirt. Now your kid just goes in their room and doesn't talk to you and has darker and darker thoughts until they do something and you're like, holy shit, I didn't even know what was happening
Yeah.
because I didn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, what happens? You get to age 18, 19, 20, you're in college, it only gets worse. And then you're still not taught how to deal with this. So now you're going into 25. Then you end up, yeah, like your brother, you're 45. You still don't know, or you just don't want to. You've been fighting your whole life dealing with
Yeah.
this.
You're like, it's
Now
over.
you're just
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sick of dealing
Yeah.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I'm the school of thought. Like I talk to I've said the same thing my dad said to me my whole life to my boys. If you're dealing with a bully, tell him stop. If he does it again, tell the teacher to tell him to stop. If he does it again, punch him in the nose. Like it's you know,
Right.
some people listening may say I'm a Neanderthal for saying that, but they're like, you can only let your kid try to use the system so many times when it's a flawed system. And like nowadays, they're like kids don't get suspended for doing this shit anyway. It's like, oh well, we're just gonna talk to him about it and tell him bad boy. Like
Yeah.
no, like there should be repercussions for your actions. And sometimes as a kid, you have to be the one that gives the other kid repercussions. And so
Yeah.
you teach your kids that, and you teach them to defend yourself. And the other thing you do is you teach them to talk to you, right? Like, hey son,
Hmm.
like if anything happens, like I'm here, talk to me. You check in with them about their feelings, you check in with them about their emotions. You're like, hey, what's going on at school? Like, are there any bullies? Is there anything happening into you? Like, who is getting bullied? And don't just defend yourself, defend your friends, right?
Right.
Someone
Yeah.
does something to your friend, they're doing it to you. Like you're a team, you're friends. If you're at a party and you see someone, because I have two boys, if you're at a party, like I'll take a step back. Like you may have heard like the Canadian national junior team a number of years ago had 5 players who did something really inappropriate with a young woman. And now charges are being filed. Like 4 of these guys were now in the NHL. And so they had to
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
a break from their team, right? One of them was the Philadelphia Flyers goalie, as an example. And so I say to my sons, like, hey, like there's appropriate and inappropriate. Like if you're at a party and there's young women and there's alcohol, like if you see a guy doing something inappropriate, like you step in and say, hey, like this isn't kosher. Like, no, you don't
Yeah.
just let it happen. You don't just watch. You don't just stand on the sidelines. Like step in and take action. It's easier
Yeah.
with my oldest son. Like he's a pretty big dude. But I'm like, hey, look, like you're a big guy. Like if you see that shit happening, it'll be your job to step in and say, hey guys, like A, this is wrong. B, like it's gonna have a massive impact on the rest of your life. Like, don't be stupid and shut that shit down. It's the same with bullying. Bullying, behavior towards women, like raise them to be strong, masculine men who don't do shit that gets men in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause then, I mean, even in the end, it reflects poorly on the man. In the end.
Exactly.
So you're looking out for men in general, not just your family and your kids. You're looking out
Yeah.
for your image as a man. And there's a couple things there. One was repercussions typically don't go on the guy who stood up for somebody. Yeah, I mean, or even if they do,
They're starting to.
not too many people. Yeah, not too many people are upset about it. So, I mean, my sister. someone said something to her on the bus, and like you said, jump in. So I jumped in and I asked him to repeat it. I gave him an option to not say it again. Right. All right. Maybe you made a mistake, but give that grace. He repeated it. All right. Now it's my time to step in because nobody's here for it. It's just me, it's my sister, and it's every kid on this bus. So I need to let every kid on this bus know not to mess with my sister, not to mess with other people. Just get on the bus, go home. So I step up, and now I'm suspended because I fought this kid. I went home. My mom made me cookies. I played video games for the rest of the weekend. I got an extended weekend. That person stepping up, it seems scary because, especially in a world now, I mean, you look at what the police officers a year ago or something that got jumped in New York, and then the guys that jumped the police officers aren't getting any repercussions, but the New York police officers are, or the person that didn't jump in is still getting repercussions. If you do jump in, you're getting either way, there's something wrong because there's a situation at your hands that you don't know how to deal with. That's why you're saying, build a strong, just individual in general. If we're not strong, just then pretty much that team with the voice wins if no one's strong. So now
100%,
everybody's running around with the
100%,
voice, and now it's just
100%.
voices again. Yeah. So it's
And they're letting softness ruin society.
Mhm.
And I mean, we're gonna tangent here. Let's do it, bro. Like you look at these cities like San Francisco and Portland and San Diego, and in places where we're tolerating behavior that shouldn't be tolerated and we're not dealing with it. Like you go to Texas, that shit's not being tolerated.
Right.
And people in the military would understand this. Like there are rules and there are consequences for behavior. And in the consequences, like that store owner who smacks a guy with a broom for trying to shoplift from his corner store, or like pulls a bat out from behind the counter and is like, if you shoplift in my store, like I'm hitting you in the knee with this. Like that shop owner shouldn't be the one who gets charges pressed against him. The
Right.
frigging guy who's coming in trying to take his livelihood should be the one who's charged. Like we should not be letting people walk into an Apple store. Like we all see the videos, like with a bag and just start ripping all the shit right off display, drop it in a bag and walk out. And we've seen some videos where someone steps in and like gives the guy a little 1-2, and that guy's the one that people are like, that guy got charged. It's like,
Yeah.
well, whoa, that was a law-abiding human who took it upon himself to defend society from
Right.
depravity, and that guy is the one that's going to be charged. Like you're
Yeah.
teaching people not to stand up. I'm going to say not to stand, and I'm Canadian, but I'll say not to stand up for America in the ideals that it was built on. Like when we see wrongdoing as civilians, as society, we should say no to wrongdoing. We shouldn't say, well, if I intervene, I will be the one who's charged. So I will not intervene and I will let bad people do bad things. Like, where are we headed if
Right.
that's what we allow?
And
Right?
yeah, so I was watching Steve Bannon went on Tucker Carlson. I'm not like crazy political. I like analyzing it because it's really what's showing our world a bit. And he's getting arrested. He was Trump's campaign advisor. He's getting arrested. He's putting in jail like next week or something like that. And he asked him, how do you feel about going to jail for this? And he just said, look, I served in the military 4 years. I went on a cruise ship, or not cruise ship, a Navy ship for 3 of those years. And I was in that ship doing whatever I had to do. This is the same thing. I'll go if I got to serve my country and I got to do it in a jail cell because that's just where the country is. I guess that's just what I have to do. And it's people. I mean, we talked about it earlier, finding your purpose. If your purpose is just to, cultivate a good life for everybody, that's not a bad way to serve that purpose. I mean, it sucks that we're in this state, but if that's what's got to happen just for us to serve this greater purpose together as a team, now we're all a team player. We end up, all the good guys end up in jail. Something. I mean, I'd rather be in jail for that time. Whatever goes on in the outside world, I'd rather be in jail with the good guys because the outside world's on flames. So it's taking that sacrifice because sometimes that's just what we have to do in general.
Well, I think that's why you see this polarization of politics, right? Where like the right just goes further right, the left just goes further left. And it like if you're, in the past, I would have thought about myself as like a reasonably moderate in the middle, a bit more candidly to the left. And
Right.
now people are listening to this podcast and they're probably gonna call me far right Trevor, right? Like it's like because I'm saying as humans we should stand up for what's right and we should not let depraved people do depraved things. And they're like, wow, that guy's all right. And I'm like, well, no,
Dig it.
like, I've like in the version of Canada, I'm like, I've voted on the left side my whole life, but
Yeah.
I guess all of a sudden in the last 3 years I've become I've completely jumped to the far side of the opposite side. Like it just makes no sense to me that like to stay on the middle or to stay slightly left, like I have to go all the way and I have to be like, no, like we should let everybody do everything, even if it's
Yeah.
depraved and
All of a
wrong and
sudden,
illegal.
everything's
And
a spectrum.
like, yeah, like why,
But
why are
except
we
for
only
this.
allowed to be here or here? We can't be here anymore. Like, why can't we all just like be in the middle and
Yeah.
maybe disagree on one or two things? Like there's almost no topic where you're allowed to agree anymore. Like every topic has to be like, well, if that guy says that, I have to say the opposite. You said the sky's blue, I have to say it's cloudy today. Like,
Yeah.
like we can agree on probably 95% of things, and maybe 5% of things we have some contentious debate, but like they make it so we have to disagree on everything. And I think on crime, I think on shoplifting, on like a lot of these things, we probably all agree that it shouldn't be allowed and we should stop it and we should figure out ways to police it. And those ways shouldn't be that the shop, like there was something on Twitter the other day, some guy who's worked at a retail store for like 20 plus years followed a shoplifter out into the parking lot and the store fired him because that's against store policy. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I
Like,
worked at Home Depot. It's the same way. If you follow them out, you get fired. Because now it's on big corporation. If that guy gets hurt,
he's
now
going to
the
sue you.
corporations, whatever it is, he'll end up suing Home Depot. And it's gotten to the point where it's just like,
Horrible.
well, just let it happen. Now they got gates on everything where you can't even go in and get a thing of oil because you got to get an associate to open the gate because too many people are stealing oil.
I was in a store the other day and we wanted a pint of ice cream. The pints of ice cream are locked up.
That's insane.
I was like, what?
Just
I
an
was like,
incredible distrust.
Can I get a key to get my Ben and Jerry's? I was
Yeah.
like, are they just telling me I'm fat, or are people shoplifting Ben and Jerry's?
Yeah.
Like,
Or are the
what's
fat people
happening
taking
here?
all of
And maybe it's like when you're high on whatever drugs are happening in that area, you like ice cream, so you come in and shoplift
Mhm.
ice cream because it's high calorie and it's a little pint and you can just like run with your pint. I don't know, but like when did we start locking up a pint of ice cream in a freezer? Like what is happening in
Yeah.
society that is the way we've decided to like manage life?
Yeah. Well, and that's perfect segue there is managing this with life. So, I mean, starting with your track record at 30, 32, you started being the outcast and the guy going against all these ideas. And you've been doing it for a while. For someone who's been doing it just recently, how have you managed that? How have you, especially with an online presence, Twitter and all of this, how do you go on Twitter, write whatever you got to write, and still be a part of the social media world with all of this stuff still going on and still kind of got to be intact with it? Because even this conversation, neither one of us are extremely political. We're talking about psychology, but this stuff, it's applicable. How do you manage that craziness with the voice in your head saying you're crazy for going against it, especially, and maybe I'm wrong, but especially in Canada?
You start to surround yourself, and I don't want to say echo chamber, right? Like I want to be careful there because for sure I'm okay with people who have different political opinions and views than I do, right? But you surround yourself with people who share a similar mindset and are focused not on all that's wrong in the world, but what's right. and how to win. And so when you look at a lot of the people online and a lot of people in the world, and Ed Lattimore wrote about this today on Twitter when he said there's some people whose sole goal in life is to stand against things. Those aren't people I spend time with. I don't spend time with the ism people, right? Or the ist people. You're an ableist, you're a this, you're a that, you're a this, you're a racist, like they have a list of like everything you are based on one thing you say. I will not spend any time with those people. I will not spend time with people whose sole goal is to tear things down. I spend time with people who want to lift people up, spend time with people who want to build businesses, want to build society, want to make this world a better place. Even if by making it a better place, all they're focused on is making themselves better, making their family better, and making their business better. You surround yourself with people who want to win at the game of life and recognizing that to win. So here's the problem with the ism people and the ist people. They want to win by tearing all the towers down.
Yeah.
Right? No one's castle can be bigger than the smallest hovel. So we're going to raise everything. We're going to burn the system down. So we're all in the shit in the muck, but we're equal. So no one can stand out. No one can be better. No one can win. No one can have more money. It's fucking crabs in a bucket. The crab starts to get out. All its friends grab its legs and rip it back down into the water. That's the type of life they want to live. And like, I'm just not here for it. I'd rather see you build the tallest castle you can build and see someone else build the tallest castle they can build and help. Sure, some people have I'm not saying, hey, middle-aged, wealthy white guy, okay, I probably got it a lot easier than some other people. I'm not saying don't give them a hand up. Let's do that. Let's help them build the highest castle they can build.
Yeah.
Let's give them a good foundation to build on. Let's support that. Let's not tear Trevor down so that they feel better because now Trevor's low with them. Like, let's give everyone the tools, the system, the support to be the best version of themselves they can be. And when you surround yourself with people who have the same ideas, same philosophy, and I'm gonna call it an abundant mindset, a growth mindset, they realize we can all be more than we are today. Right? You're good enough as you are, Trevor, and this is important when we start to think about mental health and depression. You're good enough as you are, and you can be better. I guess that's the way that I choose to live. I'm good enough as I am, and I can be better. And every single one of us is that way. And when we surround ourselves with friends like that, we can't help but grow. And quick example in the real world, I had dinner with 4 buddies last night. So there was 5 of us. These are friends I've had for 25 years. I met them when I graduated high school and started working at KPMG. And these are guys who we push each other, we challenge each other, we support each other. And as much as I sometimes you don't feel it about yourself where you're like, oh, I've accomplished a lot of things in life. But like when you and I are talking before the air and you're like, oh, these are some of the things you've done. Or someone introduces you on their show, you're like, oh shit, like that is a lot of things.
Yeah.
But these other guys are guys who have done just as much or more. And you're like,
Right.
So, that whole saying, like you are the people you surround yourself with. It's like those guys kick ass at life. And that's the circle I surround myself with. And the circle I've surrounded myself with online are the same type of people. The type of people who are driven, who view life as a video game or a matrix that has rules, systems, and once you know them, you can figure out how to win at this game, at this simulation. And you surround yourself with those people and you all win together.
Yeah, and it's nobody upset that the other person won or something like that. So for me, I grew up in a household south side of Chicago where we were lower middle class, if anything, if not lower class. And that, I'm not blaming my parents or anything. It just kind of seems like that generation was more of, the rich people got lucky or something like that. It's like more of a generational wealth. The rich people are lucky, they're different than us. So I kind of saw it as that, like, oh, well, they're rich, I got no chance or something like that. And that's just, uh, I know I'm not the only one on that, and I know it's probably more prevalent today when you go online and you see whatever on social media. You got an 18-year-old making 200 grand a month on drop shipping, whatever it may be, and you see him, and you're like, man, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough, or I'll never make it. And it's just kind of realizing that that's what's happening. But when you bring up the crab in the bucket in the military, it's you gotta have a level ship. There's
Yeah.
no you don't have a choice. If there's a good guy, maybe he's in charge of more things, but the good guy, rarely does he stay amazing while the rest of the crew is down here.
Yeah.
He comes down to the crew. And it's when you get out of the military, you got to start transferring that competitiveness in the military, because it's still competitive. All the people at the bottom are still trying to get great or trying to match the guy at the top, whatever it may be. But you got to take that competitiveness, take it out of the military, and then go find a group of friends, like you're saying, that are all doing this. Because when you're alone, and even starting the podcast, the only thing that got me to really start the podcast was having a friend, and he used to be my co-host, saying, no, dude, we could do this.
Yeah.
When you got someone who's got the mindset of rich people are just richer just because they got lucky, that person's going to say, that's for the rich person, or that's for someone else. That ain't you, man. That's not what you're here to do. And you start getting this mindset that, oh man, I'm fighting against the rich people, but I'm not good enough to be one of them. And I don't know how to make it to them because they're just lucky all the time. And you start fighting. And now, especially out of the military, you're fighting against your team.
Yeah.
Now you're fighting against everybody on your team because you want to get up, and you're trying to get up and they're trying to tear you down. It's definitely interesting when it comes to that, and just managing life in general, because we don't want to change. I wish I was born the way I'm supposed to be. And I don't
Yes and
any
no.
type
Yes
of
and no.
change. Right.
Yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
want to change. Now I want to be the best version of myself. But when you're in that, like the 9 to 5 headspace, you're getting to that 9 to 5 because you like the consistency of waking up, going to school, going to sleep, whatever it may be. You got that steady regiment for however many years, and you go into that because that's just what you're used to. And then
You're
finally,
trained.
you're
Think
trained.
about the school system. You're
Right.
trained to be a good little factory worker.
Right. And then at some
That's
point,
what
you're like,
schools
all
were
right.
created for.
Right. Yeah. And at some point you're like, man, I gotta change. And then we end
Yeah.
up changing, but you're not with a group of people also trying to change. You're still with that same group of people that you were sitting next to in the cubicle, who's been sitting there with you for the past 5 years. And he's not going to want to see you change, because then if you change, he's got to change or he looks bad.
Oh, okay. We're gonna dive into this. So
This episode is sponsored by Honor Guard Coffee. Steven, the owner, came on our show. The link will be down below. He's an incredible man. He was a Marine vet, faced a fair bit of suicide ideation himself, so he decided to start a coffee company to help with that. His whole mission is to pair every veteran in need with a service animal, so 25% of the profits are donated to doing so. I don't have a service animal. I have two great buddies with service animals, and they help them tremendously with everything they've witnessed and been through within the military. So I support Steven's mission. He supports ours. We align so well that I just had to get him on, had to have him as a sponsor. Each different coffee bean is a different service animal that actually served. So I think that's just a pretty neat thing to be doing. Everybody loves dogs. I love dogs. Everybody loves dogs. And to pair that with saving veteran lives and coffee, I am extremely thankful to have Steven as a sponsor and Honor Guard Coffee as a sponsor. So go ahead and check out the link below. Get yourself some Honor Guard Coffee, honorguardcoffee.com. We appreciate your support, and let's move back to the episode, back to the mission of saving 22.
and I'm the same way as you, Trevor. I grew up very similarly, like lower middle class, and you learn horrible money habits. You know, because you don't have it. So when you don't have it, you learn scarcity, and you learn,
Hmm.
like, if you have it, you have to hoard it, and you learn you're not worth it, and you should only earn so much. So your ability to ask for more is minimized. And you go back to Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas dinners, and you're like pro capitalism and pro self development, and your family's talking, and they're like pro union and pro like socialism, and you're like, what the fuck is wrong with all of you? And they're like, you're a capitalist pig, and you're like, no, I'm not, I just believe in myself. And you're like, it's a dichotomy, right? Is because you've made a decision to break out of the mold, and they haven't. And so they're like, well, no, the government should give us more, and society should give us more. And you're like, no, you should just get your ass off the couch, spend your night learning and growing and developing different skills, and go out and earn more. And they're like, what? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And
no
so
way.
it's totally crazy. But you look at that and say, like, what that leads to is your supporters are more often than not those people who are closest to you. The people that are closest to you are often the ones who don't want to see you succeed. And people wonder why that is. And it's to some extent the crabs in the bucket. But what it is you are a mirror to their life. And what I mean by that is, if you've got your buddy in the cubicle, you've been in the cubicle for 5 years, and during those 5 years, you've been studying, like, let's say you were in a cubicle as clerks or administrative people in a law firm. And at night, they were having their beers and chicken wings and watching some Netflix. And at night, you were going to law school. And so now, 5 years later, you've moved from the administrative cubicle to being an associate lawyer, right?
Hmm.
And that person's still in the cubicle. They don't want to see you succeed because you've just shown a light. You've just held up a mirror that they wasted 5 years while you were moving ahead. So they want to see you as the guy who was in the cubicle beside them, because as soon as you demonstrate that you can be more than the guy that was in the cubicle beside them, you've shown them that they could have been more than the guy in the cubicle,
Right.
and they didn't do it. So those people who are your inner circle, unless they're on that same journey of growth, don't want to see you succeed, because you shine the light that they didn't do the work. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And it leads me to ask just about family in general, especially bringing up Thanksgiving. I close family my whole life, still close family, text my family every day, call my family, still talk all the time. The way I found to still relate to them and still be able to talk to them is to find one thing in common with all of them. So my brothers and my dad is
Excellent.
hockey. So I
Yeah.
could talk to them about hockey. And maybe it takes a like tonight, I'll watch there's a Stanley Cup going on. I'll watch that going on. I'll watch that game. If I was in my own world, I would never watch it. I love hockey. It's one of my favorite things, but sitting down watching a 3-hour game just for next year for me not to remember who won the Stanley Cup anyways, to me it's whatever. But to be able to relate to them and talk to my family, I spend that extra time studying whatever it is so I could talk to them about hockey. And then my sister, it's whatever and whatever. What do you do to still, especially like with your brother growing up so close in age and he's doing this and you're doing this? How do you still talk to him without having the, I guess, greater than you mindset or the I don't really know because a lot of veterans are going to
S-
go home to their family once they get out. So those are the first. That's what I did. Those are the first people they're going to
Yeah.
encounter,
Yeah.
and they're going to encounter the realization that they're not growing like you. They're not doing the same thing as you.
Yeah.
Now you got to still relate though.
It's 100% what you just said. Like, it's the exact same scenario. And so when they go back to that, the one thing we want them, if they're listening to us, we don't want them to change from that mindset they would have developed in the military, which is consistently growing and learning and working out and pushing themselves to be the best the best man they can be, the best person they can be. We want them doing that. We want them to continue to grow and develop, and not to fall back into the trap of what their childhood was, and what the people back home are doing. And it might often mean that your friends today aren't the friends that you grew up with. They aren't, and your family is your family, but they're not the determinant of what you become. And so it's exactly what you said. It's we bond over the things we bond over, but it's not everything. So it's, like every few months I'll go out to a movie with my brother, because our whole lives we watch movies together. So we'll be
Yeah.
like, hey, like a good movie's coming out, and it's the type of movie we would have loved together as kids. Like, hey bro, you want to go to a movie? You want to hang out? You want to have dinner? And watch a show, and just shoot the shit and find out how your life's going, what's working, what isn't, and let's just be brothers. And with my
Yeah.
sister, it's those things with family, and it's interesting. Her and I have actually really grown close over the last 20 years, and part of it is like she's got her master's in education, and we write there's a fantasy novel series we're writing together. It's kind of been on pause for a few years, but we finished the first book, and um so we have a lot that we bond over, and being parents, and we bond over that. Writing, we bond over. So, and then with my mom and dad, I talk to them about the things that they want to talk about. Yeah, I've
Right.
stopped trying. I've stopped trying to evangelize, Trevor. I've stopped trying to.
Exactly.
I've stopped trying to. Like, there's no point anymore. Like I learned.
Yeah.
You're younger, right? You said 26.
Yes.
So you still want them all to be the best they can be. And you want to tell them how they can grow, and how they can become more, and how they can change, and how they can evolve and look like what I'm doing. You stop. You stop. You just talk to them about the hockey. You just talk to them about their grandkids. You just talk to them about what's happening in their lives. And you see them less, and you say, hey, like, these are the topics that are available, and I'm going to focus. Like, you already nailed it. Like, hey dad, I'm going to
Yeah.
talk to you about football. I'm going to talk to you about hockey. I'm going to talk to you about, my kids are older now, 16 and 13. So a lot of the conversation with my parents is talking about the boys, right? And talking about their
Yeah.
sports, and they come watch them play hockey. They come watch them play football. And we talk about that. We talk about, you know,
Yeah. How do you?
yeah,
I'm picturing this Thanksgiving dinner that you because this is just so spot on. Because especially my family, there's 3 or 4 of them that work in Home Depot, so Thanksgiving is Home Depot's Thanksgiving. Like
yeah,
we're talking Home Depot. How do you hold back? Like I have come to the more the realization to stop evangelizing, stop trying to tell them to do this. Um, but do you just, I guess, just listen to what they have to say? Because for me, if I'm at Thanksgiving, I already know you guys don't wanna hear what I have to say, Like, I'm showing up to all these events knowing you guys don't really care what I got going on. So how do you it's just all about them? Is that what it is? Because when they're talking Home Depot at my Thanksgiving, I'm just like, "All right, Home Depot it is," or I leave, go to a different room, eat, whatever it is. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's interesting, because what we'll do too is, like, we go up. We have a cottage up in the interior here, like in a little lake area, right? So, like, we'll have my sister and brother-in-law and their kids and my parents join us for a week. So, take the Thanksgiving and make it a week. And what you do is you just make it those common things, right? And you make it, because one of the fun parts about life is you realize, and I try to tell people this, is everybody has something they can teach you, right? So what I love, one of the things I love when we're up there is, like, my brother-in-law is a great fisherman. And so, like, he taught my boys how to fish, right? Like, we went to like a Walmart and bought a bunch of fishing rods, and he's like, "Here's what you need." And he got the gear, and he got the tackle, and he hooked us up, and we go and fish. So what's our commonality? It's that, or like, there were improvements that had to be done around the cottage with hanging art, putting together furniture, and he's like super handy, and he has all the tools, and he's like kicking ass. And so we're bonding over that. And like he and I have all these different things we can bond over that he's really good at that I enjoy learning. So I choose to learn those things from him. And when I'm with my sister, I want to learn about what's happening and part of it is just that curiosity, right? And it's
Right.
going back to, we're stealing from Carnegie's to be interested. So yeah, it's about what they love, and let's explore it, and let's examine it, and let's spend time on it. And then the other thing is, like, there are things that bond us all, and they're probably in your family. So what bonds us all? Let's have a crib tournament. Let's
Mm.
let's whip some cards around the table and play some
Yeah.
crib. Let's play some poker. Let's play some what's the one we like? Hearts, not hearts, but Oh Hell is a
Spades?
game we play. The
Oh.
one with the popsicle sticks. Like there's a bunch of
Yeah.
different card games that we'll play, and because they bond us. And then, like, while we're up there, I've got like all this gear I have that is because, like, I'm looking at you through a teleprompter. I've got the good camera behind it. I've got lights. This all comes up to the cottage with me. I make a makeshift studio in my bedroom, and I keep recording episodes while I'm up there. And I'm reading books while I'm up there. And I go for 2-hour walks with my dog by ourselves. If my sister wants to come, or any of the kids want to come, they come. But they don't want to go every day. So I just go by myself and I walk. And last time we were there, I developed a love of pickleball. So I'd like bring my son and I'd play like a 2-hour game with my son. And so, like, you've got that ability to say, hey, while we're together, let's bond over those things that you love. Let's bond over those things that drive you. And they're similar. Like, they'll be like, hey, what's going on with your show? What's going on with social media? I read your recent newsletter. My mom and my sister text me all the time after I write a newsletter, and like, it's just beautiful. Like, it's really heartwarming that they do that. And so they're curious too. And we share that as a family. So they will ask me what's going on, but I try to be cognizant, like, hey, let's zone in on, like, I've got you guys up at my cottage for a week as my guests. So I'm going to zone in on what makes you happy. And like, we're going to go mini golf, and we're going to go for ice cream, and we're going to watch some movies, and we're going to play cards, and we're going to play some board games,
Mhm.
and we're going to have fun, and we're just going to chill out. We're going to go down to the lake and spend some time in the lake, or maybe I'll just go off with my wife and go paddleboarding, just the two of us, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's really it's exactly what you said. It's zoning in on that, and they're all living a good life. They're all living a really good life. Like, I look at it, I think differently than a lot of people, Trevor. I look at my sister's life. I look at where we are. I look at my parents, and I look back at how we grew up, and I'm like, every single one of us is way better off today than we were as children. Like, it's not even close. Not even
Yeah.
close. But I think a lot of people are falling for the Kardashian trap, or a Kardashian effect, as I call it, where we're all comparing ourselves to social media. And they may see the trips I go on with my wife. They may see trips their friends go on, and they're like, well, I'm not doing that, so I'm not living a good life. And I'm like, you're living a way better life than you did when we were kids. Your kids are living a 10x better life than we did.
Yeah.
But
And that's the
they're
goal
comparing,
anyways.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
every generation better.
Right.
But they're comparing themselves against others. And so we can't do that.
Yeah. I was just going to say a common theme when we're talking about hanging out with your family is just being so damn comfortable with yourself. Like we
Yes.
talk, I mean, talk about not bringing up yourself. That's a sense of being alone. You're a bit alone. People don't
Yeah.
want to hear what I have to say. I'm a bit alone. Now, how does your wife play a role into this? I wanted to get into this almost right away because when you told me she's working full time with you, I got chills. Because that's my end goal is to have a wife supporting me in that type of manner as well. How does she kind of play a role in that? Is she, I mean, if I would assume she's pretty oriented towards being the best you both can be and getting better and better and better and better. does she have a struggle with connecting like that with your family or her family? Does she help you in a way to where you could be alone? Not alone, but when you guys are off with your own family, you guys are in your own little, like you said, own little echo chamber kind of. Is that,
Yeah.
is
It's a bit
kind of
different
someone
for
else?
us. It's a bit
Yeah.
different for us because we've been together now for 29 years. So it's, the she started dating me. I had just turned 17. She was 16, turned 17 2 months later, 3 months later. So like we've been dating each other since we were kids, right? And based on that, sh her involvement with my family is huge. Like,
Oh yeah.
and mine with hers because I've known her parents for 29 years. I've known her siblings. She's known my siblings and parents for 29 years. You think about it, that's 29 Christmases together. Like it's longer than you've been alive, Trevor, right? Like
Yeah.
she spent as much time as many Christmases with my parents as you have with yours. And so you look at that and it allows this seamlessness, like
Yeah.
where planning family events or what's going on with the family, like oftentimes I don't even have to be that involved because my wife's relationship with my sister and my brother-in-law is just super strong, right? Is the respect they all have for each other, the ability to joke with each other. Like, so if I'm like, hey Les, I'm just gonna go for a walk, she's like, yeah, I'll just me and Paul and Bonnie will go do this. And it's just like it's really beautiful. It's super supportive. Um, it's interesting in that sometimes even in your relationship, and this can be challenging, the the level of growth and development and focus that you put in on that, your partner may not have that same goal. They also may not have, maybe one could argue that I've had the ability to do that because she's been so supportive behind the scenes, which meant that she didn't have as much time to do that. So there's that element. And so
Mhm.
it's you you don't always have to see that your partner have that exact same growth trajectory that you have. And it's respecting and admiring the things that they value and they're good at. Almost to the same extent, Trevor, but it's a little bit harder to um, what you said about when you have family dinner with your family. It's like
Yeah.
because your wife and kids become your family, and at some point you're like, oh, well, none of you are interested in these same things I'm interested in. Well, we'll talk about what you're interested in, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about your school. We'll talk about your PTA committee. We'll like
Right. Which
let's just
doubles
chat
down
about
on being alone. That
yeah,
just
which doubles down on being alone, and then I'll just go
right.
back in the office and read my books and talk to my friends online and change. Or so the more you can find a partner who's got those same goals and same visions and same desires as you, the better. For sure, the better.
Mhm.
But I met her when I was a kid, and so did we have that exact same trajectory? I'd say for a period of time we did, right? And probably for the first decade, for sure. And then it
Yeah.
just changes. And then your goal, like some of you say, hey, I'm happy where we are. I don't need more. I don't need to be more. And some people say, well, I always need to be more. And it's just a difference.
Right. No, I think this is a perfect way to kinda end it up and kinda round them all together here is talking about being alone. That's where it starts. You have to survive that.
Yeah.
If you don't survive yourself alone, you're not gonna be able to go out with your family and be alone. One of two things are gonna happen. You're gonna be so lonely it's gonna stink, or you end up doing things you don't really wanna do to fit in. So you got to you got to be so comfortable with being alone that you realize really one, you're not alone. You got your own path, you got your own life. But there's so many people next to you that could help and support you. And like you say, find a friend group. There's people out there. especially in America, people out there trying to build a business, get up and running, become rich for their family. And really, those goals all align together to building a better generation for our kids. How how do you start being comfortable alone? What can the viewers here, the military people, the veterans, especially
Yeah.
in the military, you're not alone really ever. Maybe overseas you end up alone, whatever it may be, but typically not alone. There's a buddy system all throughout basic training. You got to carry someone with you wherever you go, no matter what, there's another person with you. So you're typically never alone. How do you start being comfortable alone? Because that's bottom line. That's where we're losing it right now. Can't be alone, and then that's where the suicides happen. How do you do
Well,
that?
I think a couple things to focus on there, and we mentioned earlier, let's come back to depression. So let's come to that
Let's do it.
because because I have been there in my life, and um, for a lot of the people that are in the service and are veterans, the it's a real issue, and like nothing bothers me more than those people on social media who say all you have to do is go outside and go for a walk and get some sunshine and your depression will go away. Like anyone who's saying that has never been depressed. Like
Right.
that's what I'll say. Uh, and it's not always the problem with depression is you can't spot depression yourself, right? You can once you've been through it and
Yeah.
you've come out the other side because you start to say to yourself, Trevor, oh, I'm back there again, right?
Not
Like
again.
not
Yep.
again, never again. And so what does that look like? Is the first time that happened for me was 2003, I'm gonna say. So I was 23, 24. I was just about to be married. I just wrote my exam and to become a chartered accountant. I was waiting for the results. I started to just behave erratically, make bad decisions. I quit a job. I took a job I didn't like, and then I tried to go back to the old job, and they said no. And so my wife and I left the country, and we moved to Bermuda for 2 years with KPMG. And while we were there, my behavior was just erratic. And it, you know, it got pretty bad. And I don't know if it was like suicidal bad, but I do know like there was a stretch of road because in Bermuda you ride scooters, right? And there was this stretch of road, Trevor, where I would just start to every day when I was driving my scooter home, I would close my eyes and I
Mhm.
would count longer. And then it got to like I would close my eyes and take my hands off the handlebars and try to count to like 5 and then open my eyes again. And like at the time, I don't think I thought I was trying to engage in behavior that would lead to me not being there. But if I look back and I say if I hadn't gotten the help I got, that's probably where it would have gone, right? Because if I was already doing that before I got help, where would that have gone if I hadn't have
Mhm.
got the help that I got? So something that's, it's a topic that's really near and dear to me, and I've never shared that level of detail is and where I was fortunate was how we ended up in Bermuda was my wife's cousin was over there as an accountant as well. And she was dating a guy who happened to be the senior manager who led my group. And he took me out for beers one night and he said, "Hey, I don't know you that well, but what I do know is the guy that Trisha describes isn't who we're seeing. And so something might be wrong. Have you ever heard of the EAP line?" And that's, the employee assistance program. Like if there's
Okay.
something going wrong mentally, you call them and they offer services. And I said no, and he gave it to me, and we had a beer and we had a chat and it was good. And I ended up calling them. And went in and I got diagnosed with depression and ADHD. The ADHD I've never dealt with. I kind of enjoy it as a bit of a superpower,
Yeah.
which is probably why I do as many things as I do, Trevor. But the depression, I was like, oh, like this is all making sense. Like why I'm not wanting to get out of the bed in the morning. Why am I pulling the covers over my head and say I'll go in at lunchtime? Why am I like gambling more than I should? Why am I not behaving well at work? Why am I being erratic in my decisions? Why am I letting go of the handlebars and closing my eyes while I ride a scooter? Because I'm mentally not in the right spot. And where did it come from? I don't know, like genetic disposition. I've had a lot of concussions in my life, a lot of head trauma. Like maybe it's that. I don't know where it came from. All I know is I had to figure a way out of it. And that way out for me was one, uh, antidepressants. So I went on Wellbutrin. I've been on Wellbutrin for 20 years now. So when people tell people they don't need medication, you just need sunlight, I like, okay, great for you. I'm gonna keep. I'm gonna.
I
I'm gonna
don't.
keep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep taking my medicine because every time I've tried to come off it, I've ended up back there. Like how we talked about, you could
Yeah.
once
Slowly
you've been there.
realize.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like a fog that comes over my brain that says I'm gonna like lay in bed for an extra hour. And I'm like, I'm never letting that fog come back. I'm just not. And so if the medication, if I have to be on that for the rest of my life, so be it. The the second part would be talking to the doctor, talking to the psychiatrist. I came back to Vancouver, talked to someone. And then at some point there was a stretch where, and this is relevant for veterans and relevant for the suicide conversation. There was that stretch where two or three NHL players committed suicide, and the wrestler killed his family and himself. It was all within a 1 to 2 year period. And I was still playing hockey. I was getting concussed periodically from it. And I remember calling my mom and saying, like, I'm quitting hockey. B, I've found a concussion specialist here in Vancouver, and I'm gonna start going to see him. She ended up in tears. I think I started crying. Like it was pretty emotional. And the biggest reason, one of the other big reasons that I went to see this concussion specialist is because concussions do tie to depression is one of the side effects. One of the other side effects is this phenomenon, which I think you see sometimes in military people, is this idea. They label it as anger discontrol, where the anger that you display is disproportionate to the stimulus that caused it. So like my kid does something and I'm fucking snapping at him so hard, and it's like, well, that reaction I had with him was totally disproportionate to what he did. So I
Yeah.
needed to end that. That wasn't fair to my children. That wasn't fair to my wife. So I saw that specialist for a few years. They introduced me, they introduced me to heart variability training. They introduced me to box breathing. They introduced me to meditation and mindfulness. Like all these things that have become central to who I am over the last decade were from those athletes who committed suicide, and me saying that can never be my path. I can never end up in that depression spot again. I can't be I can't be a danger to my family. I can't be a danger to my kids being the best version of themselves they can be. So I have to become a better man, a better husband, a better father. And so being willing to be humble enough to recognize that I wasn't, right? That mentally I was not behaving as the man that I wanted to be for those people around me. And so I had to recognize that I needed to go seek outside help to become the guy that my wife, kids, coworkers that deserved. And so that was probably around the same age. That was about 32, 33 that I started seeing that guy. did that for about 3 years, and then after that, it tied into the industrial psychologists and the books on some of the books he recommended were on mindfulness, and so that's where, mindfulness and then the CBT led to stoicism, and, a
Mhm.
big part of my journey over the last 15 years, 12 years, one of the books I read, I always come back to books, was, Man's Search for Meaning, which, you
Oh
talked
yeah.
about purpose earlier, so I'm not surprised if you've read that one. And Viktor Frankl talks about this, in between a stimulus and response is a gap. And in that gap lies our power to choose. And in that power to choose is the magic. I probably butchered that a little
Mm.
bit. And I always look at it, and when you've got the depression and you've got the concussion syndrome symptoms, like there's no gap. Like the gap's like this. And it's more even like this, where here's the stimulus down here, and the response is just like fucking volatile, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like a tectonic plate just ready to burst. And the goal is just learning how to breathe, learning how to be present. So at first it's just that, and then eventually it's that, and then eventually it's that, and then eventually it's just like peace, and there's just like love, and there's kindness, and there's a gap, and like I'm not the worst version of myself, which then, because like if you think about it, when I yell at my kid or yell at my wife, or like, then the voice comes back hard, because it's like, you're a piece of shit, dad, like who treats their
Yeah.
kid like that? And and so you learn to just shut that whole cycle off through not engaging and taking the deep breaths, and you're also teaching them to be a better man because you're not showing them that volatile side, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a really long answer, but
Yeah. No, it's
so being alone is a large part of that, is the meditation and the mindfulness, and also being so comfortable, being better with that breathing and stimulus response, so that when you're with, like, even more important than being alone is being able to be with them. And I think that's probably even more important than the veterans, is you're coming back from something that no one else has experienced. And now you have to be around people who haven't experienced what you've been around experienced. How do you be comfortable around them? That's probably where a lot of the work has to happen.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Because I mean, that's sums up the why you're doing this. Doing it for my wife, my kids,
Yeah,
my family. You show up to your family function, you don't feel good about something, it's because you're doing something you don't want to do in front of your family. So be that person that doesn't do that. Be the person that slowly changes it. But something that kind of just connected in my head, and I mean, it's one of those like learning you don't know what you don't know. Just one of them stupid little things. But seeking the outside help. For me, I was 23 when I ran through my whole depression. And like you said, no, I didn't know until someone told me.
yeah,
And I was running through life for 23 years. And it happens however long you're here, you're running through life, running through life. You don't know until someone points it out to you. You
that's
don't
right.
really know. And the man's name was Kelly. He sat me down. He got out the military a couple years before I did. So he went through the VA and everything. He already went through the whole mindset thing. He was also divorced. I was divorced. So we sat down, we talked. I mean, it was at least 3 times a week, just sitting there talking. And he would lay it all out for me. This is, dude, I would tell him how I'm thinking. He's like, yep, this is what happened to me. And it turns from hurt people to healed people. And
Yes.
yeah. And I had a lady on, I think one of my last episodes of Mind Over Matter, and that's what she brought that up, and it all kind of connects. You need somebody, and that's why it's important to make it through the suicide attempt or ideation or anything like that, because now you have this person that's able to teach everybody else. That's why I do the podcast, because I went through that, and now I'm able to heal other people by telling them what I learned. And you don't know this until it's putting a word to your thought patterns. And there's nothing, to me, there's almost nothing better than
Yeah.
thinking about something for years or days or weeks. And then finally the word clicks in your head. You're like, oh my God, that's what I have. Or, oh my God, that's what I've been thinking. And now someone ends up dragging you out of that bucket. Like you said, reach your hand down and helping that someone else build that big tower.
Well, I think a lot of the men that when they come back from the military, they come back from deployment and they come back to civilian life, a really good spot for them to go, and something that this was my third major change was the hardware was, the subconscious, and it was men's work and joining a men's group. And so a lot of the service people that are men, and if there are women, there are different groups as well. But joining a men's group is super valuable because what you have is you have a group of men who some have gone through different experiences, but you have a circle to talk to. And it's different than going to a therapist. It's talking to each other, right? And other men are seeing your blind spots, and you're pointing out each other's blind spots, and you're helping each other become better men. And so often, at first I was in a group, and then after a year I started leading a group, and like we'd have a young guy, Trevor, and he'd be describing his feelings. And once in a while I'd pause and I'd say, "Hey, listen, Ted, like, it sounds like you're depressed. Like, have you talked to anyone?" And a lot of young men will be like, "Brr, brr, brr, brr." And then, I'd always do this exercise. I'd be like, okay, I hear you, Ted. Like, let's go into ape culture, but let's take a step back. Like, how many of the guys in this room have talked to a doctor about their mental health? And let's say we had 20 guys, 16 guys put their hand up. Like, boom. Okay. So Ted, you're not alone, right? How many of you have been on medication? Maybe 10 guys put their hand up. Like, and so now Ted is sitting there and he's like, well, whoa, maybe I am. Maybe what
Yeah,
they're
there's
saying is
more to
right.
this. Yeah.
And maybe because I think a lot of us, when we grow up in that sport culture and we grow up in that strong culture, and I think a lot of people who end up in the military come from that strong athletic sport driven
Yeah.
culture. We can't be weak, and mental health is weak, right? If I'm depressed, I'm weak.
Right.
And now you look around that circle of 20 other men, and 80% of them have just told you they've experienced it in their life, which means it's okay to experience it.
Right.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. Right.
Like the four
Right.
guys who haven't, they're alone. Like,
Yeah.
and it's probably coming for them soon. So, you're not alone. And we've all talked to someone at some point about it. And so it's okay to go talk to someone. It's okay to get help. Because when you get the help, now you can be like you can be like me, and you can help others help people.
Right.
Because we're all better for ourselves. We're all better for our family. We're all better for our society when we've gotten that help. It doesn't mean we're weak. It means we fixed something that was wrong. So now we're strong again. We
Yeah.
weren't weak, but we weren't our best self. And now we are our best self again, and we can help others become their best self again.
Yeah. It's a stigma that's worth breaking. That's for sure. Cause,
Yeah.
um, and that's kind of what happened in the military. You don't go to the therapist, psychologist, whoever it is. You don't go. Because
Yeah.
for me, I had a security clearance. What if she tells them my mental state? Now she tells commander, whoever, now I don't have a security clearance. Now I'm kicked out of my unit. I don't want to be kicked out of my unit. So nobody was going. And I was fortunate enough to be med boarded. So towards the end, it didn't matter. I was getting out anyways. And I started going. And then along came the trickle. Another guy. Next week, another guy. Soon enough, there's 5, 6, 7 guys in my immediate shop circle that are starting to go to therapy just because they found out, oh, I'm not going to get shit on. Nobody's going
Yeah.
to think less of me for it. And it's you what started clicking in my head was just looking at other successful people. When I was depressed, I'd hop on YouTube, Jordan Peterson, whoever all these top people are, and then I'd go into the little people, 100 views, 200 views, stuff like that. And I try to view the successful people and what's in common with them. And what do we hear? A success story where they overcome something massive and they build themselves up to where they're at the place they are now. And you think of all these cliche sayings and you hear this guy say this, and then the next guy has a version, then the next guy has a version. And you think, oh, these are all just cliche. No, this is all happening because it's real. This is we all go through it and it happens
Yeah.
consistently. And there's
Well, I
no
think it's more likely to happen.
right.
The
Yeah.
and I often say that, like, if you're happy, like think about, like, let's contrast two different people. The type of person you and I just described we are. I always want to be more. I always want to be better. I always want to achieve. I want to go. I want to go. I want to go.
Mhm.
You got that person. And on the other side, you've got a person who's perfectly happy and content in life to go in, bang out the 9 to 5, come home, have a Bud Light, watch the hockey or basketball game, go to bed, rinse and repeat 5 days a week, and then relax and party on the weekend. Who's more
Mhm.
likely to get depressed?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah, not the guy doing that. He's
they're
happy with
content,
that.
right?
Yeah, they're
Life's perfect. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to be better, Trevor. That's the problem. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you're blessed with this desire and this intelligence and drive that makes you want to be more,
Mhm.
and won't let you be content with what you would describe as mediocrity, but for the average person, they would just describe as life. And
Yeah,
the
man.
average person is content with that. And so with that contentment comes happiness, comes no depression, because there's nothing to be depressed about because life is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I make enough money that I can afford my boat. I can afford my cottage, and I can afford the beer in the fridge. And that's all I need.
Yeah.
That's all I need. I got my cable. I got my night out every month with the boys. Like, I don't
Yeah.
need more. And that's life. And they're perfectly content and perfectly happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's contentment. But you will never be content with that, which means you will be more likely than not to experience depression.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a horrible,
Especially
it's a horrible combo.
yeah. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. You keep doing and doing and doing, you're gonna keep failing
Yes.
at some point, and I mean, at some point, you'll hit the the graph and start going up, but yeah,
Yeah,
if you're doing more and you're already not content with the average, you could call that the average life. If you're not content with the average, it's gonna
that,
take more than average to make you content.
that's
Means
right.
you're gonna have to work harder, work longer, you're gonna have to do more, and you're doing more is gonna lead to more depression. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. Incredible thinking right there. I never even thought of it that way. Because I did view it as that. I switched my perspective because I was a little sad, and then it switched to no, I am so blessed and grateful that I do view it this way. There's
Yeah.
people in this life that are content that way. I'm happy that I'm not those people.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I have to do this, but it's so much harder.
Yes.
It's so much harder.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's so
Sometimes
much
you
harder.
think, like, wouldn't it be nice to just be happy, to just go to
Oh,
work and come home and drink a beer and chill the F
mhm,
out? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it would.
Oh, it would be so much easier. I almost out of the military, I almost went and did helicopter engine mechanic in the civilian world. That's what I did in the military. And I was this close to actually doing that. And I think about it now, 2.5, 3 years later, I'm like, man, I could have just done that. And I would have been 3 years in the field. And I wouldn't have been content. Never mind. Like, it doesn't,
Yeah,
like I would have been happy. No, I wouldn't have. So now it's man, it's a constant battle. But the being alone thing, it had to be about a week ago. I was just thinking to myself, and it was realizing because I'm going to write a book as well. I intend to do that, and the title is going to be "You're Not Alone." And then last week I realized we are alone. It's a two-play thing. At the beginning, you have to realize you're not alone. And then you make it through the stages and you're not depressed anymore and you're kind of building up the life. Now you're back to the medium line and you realize you are alone and it takes you up to the top. So it's a weird system you got to play, but at the beginning, if you think you're alone, that's how a lot of suicides happen. Then
Yeah.
you lean on the support group, whatever it may be. But well, man, thank you for staying a little extra here. If you have any closing remarks, anything, man, this was incredible. I'm very fortunate you came on, and of course, everybody check out his stuff down below.
Yeah, I really had a blast with you, Trevor. I mean, the end remark, right, is ultimately we are responsible for our lives, right? Like, I think that's where you're going when you are alone, is you got to own your own shit. At the end of the day, no one's going to do it for you. For the people that are in those rough spots, you go back to what you said as well, though. You aren't alone. Trevor's been through this. I've been through this. We've a lot of us that are out there have been through dark times, and now we're not in dark times. And so you are not alone if you're listening to this and you're in a dark time. There are numbers to call. I'm sure you can reach out to Trevor. You can hit me up in the DMs, and we can share resources with you. Like, there are people to talk to. Never, 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 like, in no situation is the right answer not you not being here. So whoever's listening, like, that's never the right answer, and there is help out there. So, like, that's the only thing I'd emphasize, Trevor, is I love what you're doing. I love your mission, and we want to end that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you again for coming on, Clint. And what'd you say earlier? I gotta remember this one. You are awesome now, but you can be better. So
Yeah, you're
I'm
perfect
grateful
as
for
you
who
are.
you are
You're
now.
perfect
Yeah.
as you are, and you can be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm proud of you. You're doing a bunch of stuff. You may not think of it just the way I don't think of it, but you're doing a bunch of stuff. Very proud of it. Very happy to see someone, different country, doing something similar and helping people out. So I appreciate your time sincerely, and hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend, man.
Yeah, thank you. Talk soon.
All right. Peace
Bye, my
out.
man.